Welcome back to Blitz Sports Media. I'm your host, Ryan Linkletter, and I am here with Brady Penn. Man, that was the best Thursday night football game we've gotten all year. And Kirk Cousins, no timeouts. It doesn't matter. He's going to lead his team to victory, even if it was his second chance to do it. The Falcons still found a way, and the offensive line, actually held up the second time through. And, we got a special game. Kirk threw for 500 yards, 4 touchdowns. Brady, what's your initial thoughts after this one?
No, that was cardiac Kirk right there. And I know we talked about it earlier in the week. He already had 2 game-winning drives coming into this week. And now in 5 games, that's 3 game-winning drives for Kirk Cousins. And he had an opportunity for another against Kansas City where, people could talk about ref ball or whatever. I'm not going to get into all that. But if they call a flag on Kyle Pitts, who knows how that game goes? Chiefs probably score. But the point being, the Falcons are they're close. And tonight showed how close they are to breaking through. Kirk Cousins, phenomenal game. I know we talked about this on the pod last night. I said that he's been progressing each week and expected him to have his best game tonight so far as he continues to heal off that Achilles injury. And that's exactly what happened. He had by far his best game of the year, maybe his best game of the last 2 or 3 years, honestly. I mean, that was a tremendous performance from Kirk Cousins. And honestly, his stats probably got hurt a little bit by that Darnell Mooney drop late in the fourth quarter. I know he had that interception to Levante David. I'm not sure if that was just him not seeing David or it's 4th and 15.
He was just
Try
throwing
and
that
make
thing up.
something happen. Yeah. So just a great game from Kirk Cousins and great resilience by the Falcons. And on the Buck side of things, you really got to feel like you let this one slip away. I mean, they had a chance to end the ball game there late. Bucky Irving fumbles. The defense gets you a 4 and out, I guess. And then you get a couple of penalties, a couple of bad plays, and you give the ball right back to the Falcons, who go down, kick the field goal, they get the ball, and you just get gashed. The defense was obviously tired, and a 4-play walk-off touchdown drive for the Falcons in OT. And after feeling really good following last week's dominant win over the Eagles, you've got to be feeling pretty pissed if you're a Bucs fan right now.
Yep, and it feels like the Saints and the Bucks kind of ended things in a similar fashion. Both teams kind of just handed the Falcons the game, obviously in two different fashions. The Saints with turnovers, and then the Bucks just kind of melting down on the defensive side of the ball. And the Falcons' offense was cooking today. Everything was working, and this is what we kind of expected from this unit a little bit sooner. But hey, we'll take it in week 5, not week 10 or week 15. Right, we got to see what we thought the Falcons were going to be, and Kirk was electric tonight. He was spreading the ball around. London and Mooney were great. Kyle Pitts got involved today. The backfield mix of Bijan and Algier looked good. Everything looked good for the Falcons on offense, and it was working well. They were moving the ball at ease, and the Bucs defense is not good by any means. We'll talk about that in a second, but that is awesome for them going forward, and it's going to be a great thing for them if they're going to have a chance of winning this division. On the Bucs side of things, man, that defense is horrible. That secondary couldn't stop anybody, and I love the Bucs on offense. Their offense is electric. I think Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Baker Mayfield, that trio right there is just really good, and I love their play calling that they got right now. And I honestly think that on Tampa Bay's side of things, right, you had just kind of have to rely on Baker almost. It feels like all 17 games this year with that defense. That defense is going to keep allowing points. It feels like their front seven is not horrible, but their secondary, it's horrible. That unit got cooked all day.
They don't have Antoine Winfield.
No, yeah, they didn't. And it hurt them because, although Winfield's not matching up against Mooney or London rarely, he would have matched up against Pitts and maybe helped more against Pitts. But besides that, man, that secondary is not very good. And you have to think of like a loss of Carlton Davis in there, and then those guys kind of aging in that unit and just kind of heading out of Tampa have hurt that defense over the past few seasons. And, we could be having the worst Bucs defense we've seen over maybe the last 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts, honestly, you kind of got to work backwards with this. It all starts with the Buccaneers' run defense. Teams already can gash them in the run. They're one of the worst run defenses in the league. I believe they're bottom 3. I think they might actually be the worst defense I wrote today. in rush EPA per play. So they're having to add more guys to stabilize the threat of the run, and it's lightening up passing lanes. And they're having to sacrifice pass coverage and pass defense, although I don't think they're a great unit there to begin with, especially without Winfield, in order to, be able to stop the run. And Jamel Dean, I still think is a really good corner. I thought the Zion McCollum looked really good against Detroit the last couple of weeks, not as much. And I mean, this is a defense that, if you look back, the first 2 weeks of the season played really well against two really good offenses, and since then they just really haven't been doing as much. I mean, they got worked against Denver and Bo Nix. What was their game last week? I'm drawing a blank here. Oh, the Eagles. They played the Eagles without Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. That really didn't show me much. And then tonight against the Falcons team that's starting to hit their groove kind of in all facets offensively, it feels like, except maybe the running game, they just got exposed. I mean, from the opening drive, it was apparent that Kirk was going to have his way. Kirk had time in the pocket. In the second half, I will say the Bucs pass rush did amp things up a little bit. And I mean, Kirk over the middle and really that intermediate area, 10 to 15 yards, Kirk was finding wide open guys all night long. And it's 100% a concern.
Yeah. And one of the things too is, right, we mentioned this on our last episode. This is a three-headed race in the NFC South, and all these teams, right, they feel pretty similar to me. And I think the thing that separates the one team compared to the others is the Saints have the best defense of the three, clearly at this point, right? I don't think the Saints have the best offense of the three, but the Saints have that continuity, and they have a strong defense, which the other teams don't have, and that'll be interesting down the stretch if that good defense plays a factor in that race. I want to go back to the Falcons real quick, right? Darnell Mooney had that big drop, obviously, and, some people thought that might have cost them the game. I knew they were going to get at least one more shot probably to go win that game. But, man, if Darnell Mooney catches that ball, goes for a touchdown, we have a completely different game in our hands. The Bucs are playing behind, and they're having to throw the ball instead of be conservative, try to run some clock, right? That felt like what kind of slowed down the Bucs in general was they had to go into the 4-minute drill and try to kill some clock. And it would have been interesting to see if Mooney catches that ball, the Falcons go score a touchdown there. We still get the Bucs offense who's ready to go out there and score right away instead of take some clock off. So I was kind of interested to see the Bucs offense not take the foot off the gas, and I think that hurt them in the end.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was just about to point to that. Liam Cohen, the Buccaneers offensive coordinator, had an amazing first half. And the thing that I noticed was he went with Mike Evans in the slot for majority of that first half, and Mike Evans was winning the matchup every single time. You saw him have 2 first half touchdowns. Second half completely went away from that, went to a more run-oriented attack, which did hit at times. Rashad White had a really big run at one point late in the first half. Bucky Irving was getting touches, but overall, I mean, the O-line just wasn't performing really great. There were dumb penalties by the O-line. Baker started to get hit in the second half, and that was against the worst pass rushing unit in the NFL. They had
0 pressures in the first half. 0.
Yep. And then second half, you see Baker get sacked a couple times. You see him under duress, and you saw the difference that it made. Chris Godwin was a no-show in the second half. I mean, even Mike Evans, the receivers as a whole, Baker Mayfield, and the passing offense completely came to a screeching halt in that second half. And that's a credit to Raheem Morris for adjusting in the second half. I know part of it might just be a lack of execution by the Buccaneers, but the Falcons stepped up and they made plays when they had to. And even though this particular play didn't translate to points, that punch by Jesse Bates was a phenomenal play. That was a game-changing play. It sucks that the Falcons offense didn't do anything with it and gave it right back. But what do the Falcons do? They stop a run for negative yardage. Then there's a holding penalty because the Falcons are getting pressure once again. And then they stop a screen in its tracks. Like, the Falcons defense stepped up and made plays when they needed to. But you're talking about this 3-headed race, and I just want to point to 2 things here, and that is both teams that played tonight's next few games. I'm going to read you the Bucs' next 5 games first. They are at the Saints. They're at home against the Ravens. They're at home against the Falcons. In Arrowhead at the Chiefs. And then at home against the 49ers. Those are their next 5 games. This is a game that the Buccaneers needed to win to get their momentum going heading into this tough stretch. They see the Falcons again here in about 3 weeks. Meanwhile, you look at the Falcons schedule, and it's a little bit lighter. They're at Carolina next week. Falcons have a chance to move to 4-2 next week. here in the first 6 games. And honestly, you can make a really good case that if they win that one, they should be sitting at 5-1. And that's without playing great football for most of the stretch. After that, they're at home against Seattle. They go at Tampa Bay, at home against Dallas, and then at New Orleans. So not an easy schedule by any stretch, but certainly an easier one than what the Buccaneers have coming up. And this is the time for the Falcons to keep hitting new levels. Kirk was talking about it tonight in the post game, how he hopes that they don't feel like they've arrived, that they're starting to figure some things out, especially between him and Zach Robinson. But if they can cushion this now division lead that they have over these next 3-4 weeks, they're going to put themselves in a really good position to be kind of where I think that both of us expected they might be in that playoff chase. I know you had Tampa as your South winner or Atlanta?
No, I had Atlanta too.
Okay, yeah, so we both had Atlanta. We both had them winning the division, and I'm not going to lie. After those first 3 weeks, I wasn't sure. Sitting at 1-2, a lot of offensive inconsistencies, and the Falcons have shown me a lot the last 2 weeks. It wasn't a pretty win against New Orleans. Tonight was a pretty win, in my opinion. It was a big-time win, and they're just figuring out how to win late in ball games, which is something that we haven't seen since Matt Ryan was under center.
Yeah, for sure. On Matt Ryan's ceremony.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah. One thing I want to talk about too, Baker Mayfield, he looks like a just different player than he did a few seasons ago. And I think at this point, you're the Cleveland Browns.
Sucks.
No, the Cleveland Browns need to, like, that was the stupidest decision they ever made.
They scapegoated him, man. They booted him for no reason.
Yeah, the stupidest move that the Cleveland Browns have made over the last decade is letting Baker Mayfield walk. What Baker Mayfield has turned into is a above average quarterback. He honestly is pushing top 10 at this point. I'll have him in my top
5 this year.
Yeah, I mean, I do my power rankings a little different, but Baker is definitely a top 10 quarterback in almost everybody's minds right now. And it's not just his throwing ability. He's using his mental capacities and kind of working the game and his rushing ability. Like, this guy scrambles at the right time almost every single time. He's a good leader from everything that we've heard in the media. And, the Buccaneers, they didn't kind of lose a beat from Tom Brady's last year to Baker Mayfield. And we all thought the Bucs were going to be horrible with Mayfield under center. And what he's done in 2 years? He's been impressive. And this year he's an MVP candidate. The Browns are sitting there with Deshaun Watson on a full guaranteed contract. Like, they have to regret it at this point.
I want to say the Bucs' best move they ever made in the last few years, besides getting Baker Mayfield, was firing the football terrorist Byron Leftwich.
Yeah, I mean, he was horrible.
Bringing in Dave Canales, and then now Liam Cohen, who looks really good. And Baker, I think one thing he's shown is he's adaptable to different systems. I mean, he thrived under Canales last year. He's thriving maybe even more so with Cohen. We saw him with Stefanski over there play really well. And I just want to piggyback off what you said and get on my soapbox here for a second. It's crazy that the Browns did him the way that they did, and they deserve to reap every bit of it right now. I mean, this is a guy that had 27 touchdowns as a rookie, missing like 3 or 4 games. This dude would have set the rookie touchdown record for a Cleveland Browns franchise that hadn't seen a good quarterback since the Reagan administration, and comes in, wins the Browns their first playoff game since Moses parted the Red Sea. And it's just absolutely ridiculous the way that they did him after one bad year where Stefanski, I know I just mentioned Baker being adaptable. Stefanski kept trying to do things that went against Baker's strengths, and he was trying to air it out every play. Baker is a short to intermediate guy that can throw the deep ball every now and again. That's really good in the pocket. And
one of the things that I will say,
aired out guy.
One of the things I will say is Stefanski uses so much play action with just the Browns in general. Like, we've seen it with Watson, we saw it with Baker. It's the same type of play action, and Baker's never been that great at it, right?
He's not that rollout guy.
No, he's not that rollout play action guy. Kind of like that LaFleur type of a Green Bay Packers play action. That's kind of what Stefanski does in Cleveland with their run game. And obviously Baker was not that good at it. And there would be games Baker would have spike weeks, and games where Baker would be like, "Oh man, Baker stinks." And the Browns were just like, "Oh, Baker stinks. He can't be very good."
I think Kevin Stefanski honestly just didn't like him. I think Baker Mayfield rubbed him the wrong way, and he was ready to get him out of there and convince the organization that he was the problem there, even though there really wasn't a problem. The Browns were ascending. Honestly, they had one down year, but I mean, they were 2020. They were a really good team. They came close to beating the Chiefs in Arrowhead in the divisional round. Like, they were a good team that was up and coming, and the Browns lost patience, and now they deserve exactly what's going to happen to them. And let me preface what I'm about to say with, he's not as good as this guy, okay? And it's not even close. But Baker Mayfield, the way that he plays just reminds me of a modern version of Drew Brees. He's a smaller guy back there. He likes to sit back in the pocket and dissect with these bullet throws, middle, intermediate, and it's working out really, really well. And the Bucs have been letting him play to his strengths, and you see how that's worked. But tonight, I mean, the story goes on the Bucs' lack of execution at the end of the game. And as somebody that followed the Bucs really closely in the Brady days, especially in the latter part of the Brady days, Todd Bowles is one of the worst late game coaches in the NFL. That dude, I mean, he's overall in terms of head coaches, he's just average to a little below average. But when it comes to late game situations, I have seen him piss away so many games for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, even with Baker, over the last 3 or 4 years. And it's honestly embarrassing. And it makes you wonder if they just had a little bit better decision making. I mean, there were some really questionable calls there at the end of the ball game from them. Bad execution, bad play calling, and just, again, it slipped away.
Yep. All right. Final thing we'll close with. If you got to pick one NFC South winner right now, who would you pick? And are any other teams entering as a wild card team?
I think it's just going to be one team from the South, and I'm riding with the Falcons. I think that they're hitting their stride. I think, like I said, they're winning. They're finding ways to win ugly. They're just finding ways to get it done at the end of the ball game. I think that Kirk is only going to progress. I think Zach Robinson every week is finding new little wrinkles and getting comfortable in his first year as a play caller. And I tweeted this during the game. Drake London and Darnell Mooney is one of the most underrated wide receiver duos in the league. Neither one of them is a household name right now yet. I know Mooney, he kind of was stuck with our guy Justin Fields in Chicago, dealt with some injuries too towards the end of his stretch in Chicago. Drake London's a young guy that hasn't had any QB help himself. Now both of them have a quarterback, a veteran QB that's starting to get more comfortable and learn them every week. And you're seeing both of them put up really good games and progressing by the week themselves. If Bijan can get going, you saw Kyle Pitts take a step forward tonight, the most yards in a game since his rookie year. And they got him going early too with a deep pass on like the first play. So I think the Falcons are only going to go up from here. And I think they're going to start gelling together as an offense. And my hot take, the Falcons will finish the year as a top 8 offense in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think the Falcons are trending in the right direction, right? We mentioned the Bucs schedule. I am going to say there will be 2 playoff teams in the South. I think the Bucs and the Falcons will get in. I think that leaves the Saints on the outside. I know a lot of people were high on the Saints after 2 weeks, but they've kind of come back down to reality.
What if they get Adams? I want to hear your take on that. What if they get Adams, though?
I don't really think it changes that much for me.
I don't either.
They have Derek Carr at quarterback still, right? Rashid Shaheed's actually been one of the most underrated receivers in football this year. And he had a down week last week, just didn't get the ball enough, but he was still open. He was one of the best separators last week, according to advanced analytics. And they still have Chris Olave. Like, they're not – it's not because they have a lack of weapons at offense. It's because they have a lack of a quarterback. And that's what's going to hold the Saints back. And their defense is above average. I'll give them that, but they're not a great unit. But I think like a move to get Devontae Adams, sure, it's flashy. Sure, you have 3 great receivers instead of 2 good receivers. But I don't think it's enough to necessarily push this team into a for sure division title and a for sure playoff berth. I think it makes it more likely to potentially win a wild card spot. But I still don't think that move would necessarily push them over the edge for me. And if I would have had to pick a division winner, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to go with the Falcons. Even though we both have the Bucs in our top 10 in the power rankings heading into the week, the schedule
will be top 10 this week.
The schedule for them is concerning going forward. And that's my biggest thing. Is they're going to have that first place schedule and it's going to be tough. Falcons are going to have that third place schedule, going to be a little bit easier.
They go 2-3. They're sitting 5-5 after 10 games, which, granted, similar spot to where they were last year. But that was a Falcons team that was competing with them with Desmond Ridder under center that we all saw was being held back by the coaching and the quarterback play. And, yeah, I mean, the Falcons, you really can't say enough about them. They just continue to look better every week. And there was something that I was about to say about the Falcons. Oh, gosh, I'm losing it, though. Dang it.
All right, we'll talk about it tomorrow if we remember it. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. Anyways,
Oh,
hey.
wait.
Oh, here we go.
It's back. The light bulb just went off. I was just gonna say it's a huge advantage that the Falcons already have a head-to-head wins over the Saints and Bucks. They're 2-0, a third of the way through their division schedule. They took care of business on their home turf against the two competitors in the division. Probably will beat Carolina at home and on the road. That guarantees you, if you do that, a 4-2 at bare minimum division record, which is a recipe for success. And I mean, you cannot overstate, especially in a division that's always close. You can argue how good or bad the NFC South is every year, but it always seems to come down to a game or two between first and second place. And having the head-to-head win already over the Saints and Bucks is huge as we move forward.
100% agree. All right, hey, we'll catch you guys Saturday morning with our official Week 5 breakdown. We got a loaded slate this weekend. We have the London game in the morning, so make sure you guys are up bright and early on Sunday for that one.
Oh, hey, we had a Blitz Sports Media mention on Thursday Night Football.
Brady made the Thursday Night Football tweets. What was that, post-game?
Yeah, it was right after J.J. Watt, I believe.
Right after J.J. Watt was cooking, Brady got thrown up there on a tweet. You know, they basically said they had to throw a credentialed media member up on there.
Exactly. They know about Blitz. They know ball. And now it's time for you all to share with your friends and family members. I've got roommates grilling me about the Blitz Sports Media fantasy takes. I've got coworkers. I've got people in group chats that are engaging with our content. So if you know people that aren't, get them to hop on the wave before it's too late and we leave them in the dust.
Facts. Tell us how horrible of analysts we are. We really appreciate.
Someone told me today that my fantasy article was written by AI, which I low-key took as a compliment. But they said there was no thorough analysis on like my coup take. I said to start Younghoe Koo, and he dropped 16 points. So
some people just love to comment stuff. That is just kind of how the internet works at this point. But hey, we'll catch you guys next time on the Blitz Angle. Peace.